¿Cómo les va? Bienvenidos a otra semana de Film Online dentro del Basofi. Y hoy vamos a ver un documental que en su momento realmente fue muy importante porque el hombre estaba bastante postergado por la historia. Eh, y además para nosotros en particular es importante porque es una de las pocas cosas que podemos ver de una realizadora que finalmente era argentina, aunque pasó la mayor parte de su vida en Francia. Estoy hablando de Nelly Kaplan, que murió el año pasado con 89 años y que tuvo una obra muy personal y feminista de manera temprana en Francia. La mayor parte de sus películas son francesas, ella murió en Suiza. Fue además una de las primeras mujeres en ejercer la crítica del cine en Argentina, fue cronista para la revista Gente de Cine, el famoso cineclub de Roland. De esa manera fue a cubrir festivales a Europa y decidió quedarse allá, básicamente en Francia. En algún momento incluso conoció a ABEL GANCE, tuvo con él una relación de varios años y es precisamente sobre ABEL GANCE que trata este corto. GANCE en 1963, cuando Nelly Kaplan hizo este film, como les decía, estaba bastante postergado por la historia, es decir, era considerado un hombre importante por los conocedores, por la crítica, pero sus películas eran prácticamente imposibles de ver. Sus películas más importantes sobre todo, ¿no? Estoy hablando de La Rueda, por ejemplo, o de Napoleón, se veían fragmentos y existían por supuesto copias mutiladas, pero imagínense que para restaurar el Napoleón a Kevin Brownlow le llevó más de 50 años, estuvo casi toda su vida haciendo la restauración de Napoleón y todavía parece que el trabajo no está terminado, entonces lo que se podía ver en 1963 era una lágrima. Y en ese contexto Nelly Kaplan hace esta película que ustedes van a ver, que se llama ABEL GANCE, Ayer y Mañana, que es un título significativo porque representa el pensamiento de Gans, que siempre fue una forma de revolucionario bastante rara, un revolucionario conservador, porque los temas de sus películas solían ser bastante conservadores en su expresión dramática, pero la forma cinematográfica que él encontraba para expresarlo siempre era de vanguardia. Eh, entonces el Napoleón, digamos, desde el punto de vista histórico parece, la historia parece tratada en términos, no sé, de la revista Villiquen, pero formalmente es una de las películas más absolutamente extraordinarias, en el sentido literal del término extraordinario, algo totalmente fuera de lo común que se han hecho en la historia. Eh, Lo que vamos a ver contiene imágenes de La Rueda, contiene imágenes de Napoleón y de otras películas importantes. Una de sus primeras películas, La Folie du Doctor Tube. Una comedia rarísima que hizo con Max Linder también, con varios efectos ópticos. Bueno, y varias otras cosas, además de estar narrada por el propio Gans, ¿no? Está narrada en primera persona. La versión en francés, imagino yo que sería la voz del propio Gans la que escucharíamos. Lo que vamos a ver es la única copia que tenemos acá, que es la versión en inglés, con la cual es un señor anónimo el que habla en nombre de Gans. Está en inglés sin subtítulos, pero se entiende perfectamente, van a ver que no presenta ninguna dificultad, y el material que muestra es realmente extraordinario. La pasamos en honor a Gans, pero la pasamos sobre todo en honor a Nelly Kaplan. Yo insistí durante muchísimo tiempo en que esa mujer merecía una retrospectiva. Yo no llegué a hacerla cuando hice festivales, pero los festivales siguen existiendo, ella siguió viviendo y nadie se comunicó para hacer una retrospectiva de su obra, así que murió sin ver un reconocimiento justo a su trabajo en su propio país. Y así siempre son las cosas. Espero que disfruten de este corto y mañana seguimos con más Filmoteca Online dentro de Basofi. Que lo disfruten.
history of the cinema is the history of ABEL GANCE. No other French director can boast of a career so rich in technical and artistic achievements. No other director has opened so many new horizons in a profession which even today relies on the tools he designed for the industry. His accomplishments include 50 films, several plays, and a strange book entitled Prism, published in 1931, in which he foresaw some of the most terrifying of the scientific achievements of today. How can all this be covered within the limitations of a short film?
I was born in Paris on the 25th of October 1889, but some of my childhood was passed in the Allier, a sad countryside of mines and steelworks. Later, I spent a few years at a boarding school at Chantilly, and then I was at the Chapter College in Paris. I was very fond of literature. I read Shakespeare, Corneille, Racine, and as these authors pleased me, I learnt their works by heart. I said to myself, perhaps one day I will be able to dramatize my sensations, describe them, and write plays. I had to become an actor myself to understand the effect of words on an audience. I played many different parts in many theaters in Brussels and in Paris, and I started to write. Nevertheless, the cinema intrigued me, and I played the part of young Molière in a film by Léonce Perret. One day somebody said to me, Gaumont are looking for stories. I had plenty of ideas. I went to Gaumont and to another company where I sold several stories. Whilst I was watching the filming of some scenes in the studio, I said to myself, why are they doing it like that? It would be so much better my way. And so I asked to direct my own films. My request was granted, and I was offered a blanket price of 5,000 old francs per film, to include film, actors, sets, and my salary. In 5 days I made a film which was a success, and I asked to make others. I was intoxicated too quickly, and thought that I would shatter the world with a most original story which I had, The Folly of Dr. Tube. It was about a mad inventor who discovered how to decompose light rays so that things were no longer seen in normal perspective. I used deforming mirrors and every technical trick which I thought the public would appreciate, as such a film had never been made before. When I showed the film to the company directors, they said, "He's mad. Don't let him have another cent or he'll ruin us." I was discouraged. The cinema was not all that I thought it was. After a severe ticking off, I was told that as my previous films had made money, I would be given another chance, but that I must toe the line. You know, actors must be seen down to the knees, there must be plenty of action, and that's all. I was given 25,000 old francs and told to make 2 films. I left and wrote the 2 scripts in the train. There were 4 actors, and sometimes I made mistakes, because as I filmed both stories at the same time, it was difficult to remember what had been shot and what was still to be filmed. However, in the end, I finished the 2 films, and they were both a success. One was called The Mists of Death, and the other, Redbeard, which was about a reporter who was both the editor of a newspaper as well as a well-known gangster. He was hence the first to describe his crimes in his own newspaper. I had earned a little fame, but I was ill at ease. I found that things had become far too mechanical. I managed to persuade my producers to let me make a film in which would be seen not only actions, but also sentiments, a film in which there would be psychological motives. It was thus that I made the 10th Symphony, Marta Dolorosa, and The Right to Live. These films really pleased. Why? Because it was the first time that the cinema had been seen from a different angle. I had ambitious projects. Sarah Barnhart agreed to play the lead in my story, The Victory of Samuthrace. I was in demand by the film producers. I had foreseen everything except the war. Until 1914, I had only suffered for myself, but now I started to suffer for others, forgetting my own troubles. I never knew that anything could be so terrible. I wanted all the dead of the war to rise one night and return to their homes to find out if their sacrifices had really been worthwhile. The war would come to a halt, strangled by the enormity of the horror, and this was the key to my first I Accuse. The cinema was less and less able to cope with grandiose situations, and each day I retreated further from my big stories. To me, the tools of the cinema seemed quite inadequate to build cathedrals of light. I searched for a dramatic motive and at the same time an everlasting subject which could use a world made for the cinema, a world of locomotives, of rails, and of signals. I sought a world of snow and lonely peaks, a symphony in white following a symphony in black. I wanted to create catastrophes of sentiment at the same time as catastrophes of machines, to show the similarity of everything that beats, a heart and a steam engine. The film was to be completely shot in exteriors in which the heroes were slowly revealed, just the opposite to the theater. On the 30th of July 1919, I decided to make The Wheel. I was 30, and I couldn't forget it. And at this time I was sorely tried by the death of the woman I loved more than anything else in the world. She died on the 9th of April 1921, and 3 days later I fled to New York to escape from myself. There I met the director David Griffith. We found that without knowing it, we had at the same time both sought and found the first close-ups and dolly shots. I returned to Paris and tried to bury my grief by laughing and making others laugh. With my friend Max Linder, in 5 days I made Help, the film of Max's adventures in a haunted castle. Then, for the next 2 years, I prepared my Napoleon Bonaparte. The character interested me because in his time Napoleon was a paroxysm, which in itself was a paroxysm. I had the greatest difficulty in finding a sponsor, but I had again found my great energy and a will of iron. I sought every possible means of bursting open the screen. I demanded from my camera operators every possible feat I could imagine. I wanted the camera to walk with the men, to gallop with the horses, slide with the sledges, climb, dive, and somersault just as I wished. Today this seems little, but in those days the camera wasn't used to such rough treatment. I also used a lot of superimposition. I have found scenes of Napoleon in which there are as many as 16 images superimposed. I knew that it was not possible to see more than 5. However, there they were, and because they were there, so was the potential they offered. I also used several images on the screen at the same time. I always had in mind my idea of a 4th dimension. The urge to abolish time and space never left me. The idea of Polyvision became more and more implanted in my mind. And audacity presented the same risks. I had made my choice long ago. The shooting of Napoleon progressed, and after the school at Brienne, we left for Corsica, where our arrival caused something of a sensation. Back in Paris, we shot the scenes of the convention. Dieudonné played Napoleon. Marat was played by D'Artaud. I played the part of St. Just. this, I again left Paris to film the depart of the Italian army. I felt like somebody with his arms tied, trying to escape from his bonds. And suddenly the idea came to me. If I had a screen to the left and another to the right to increase the field of vision, I would have a panoramic screen which would be infinitely more effective and more powerful than a screen on which there was a very long shot. 3 cameras, 3 projectors, Cinerama in fact is nothing more, and I took out a patent on the 20th of August 1926. Then, during the editing, I saw that if at the left and right of the center screen I placed either different pictures or the same pictures reversed, I obtained a wonderful architecture of movement. Napoleon was presented at the Opera in April 1927 and contained these triptychs. I thought that the future of the widescreen was assured. However, neither the public nor the producers had exhausted the possibilities of the normal screen, and so once again discouraged, I had to toe the line. In 1929, I made The End of the World, the first sound film to be made in France. A comet will probably collide with the Earth, and so nothing else counts. I played the part of a visionary who was a bit of a martyr, who before he died confided to his brother a great secret which will allow him to save mankind. With the exception of certain scenes of panic and orgy, I must disclaim this film, which was cut and mutilated without my knowledge. One day I went to the studio without letting anybody know and found one of the cleaners who the producer had employed out of friendship editing the film by cutting into the scenes at random. I was deeply interested by the advent of sound in 1929. I lodged my patent for perspective sound, which is the basis of what is today called stereophony. As the demand was for simple films, I gave them all they wanted. The Master of the Forge with Gaby Morlaix, and The Camellia Lady with Yvon Printemps and Pierre Franet. In 1934, I post-synchronized Napoleon. By I don't know what intuition, when I made the silent version, I made the actors speak their exact lines. I used my invention of perspective sound with 32 loudspeakers hidden in the theater. Here is a sequence of the post-synchronized version of Napoleon.
Tu as tes 300 têtes par jour, vampire! Chacal! Parle, Saint-Just! Nous avons dû faire des victimes. Mais la révolution n'est-elle pas un phare allumé sur des tombeaux? La terreur est ce qui fera perdre en partie le sens de la révolution. Mais c'est tout de même à partir de nous qu'il y a une liberté dans le monde. Toi, Saint-Just, tu n'as jamais été du parti des patriotes. Le patriotisme n'est pas une affaire de parti. C'est une affaire de cœur. Certes, j'avoue nos faiblesses. Mais oubliez-vous que pendant ce temps, nous vous avons forgé une France toute neuve et prête à vivre. 12 000 décrets, dont 2 tiers pour des musulmans. Et nous avons fait tout cela avec dans les flancs ce vautour, la Vendée, et sur les épaules, ces tigres, les rois. On nous maudira souvent dans l'avenir, mais plus tard, quand l'Europe entière ne formera plus qu'une même famille, unie par les mêmes lois, on se souviendra peut-être que c'est nous qui avons jeté le premier pont de la liberté par-dessus les frontières. Cela seul compte. Et maintenant, hurlez à la mort. Vous pouvez éparpiller nos membres aux 4 vents. Il en surgira des républiques.
After this, I made the story of a poor young man with Marie-Belle and Pierre Franet. Lucretia Borgia, which launched Edwige Feuillère on her career, and Woman Hater with Annie Ducot and Jules Berry. I give a special place to a great love of Beethoven, which I made at this period, In this film, I think that I succeeded in giving a little more of myself. In 1938, I also made the sound version of AYER with Victor Franzen. Once again, I felt the shadow of war hovering over Europe. And then I filmed Louise, and Paradise Lost, in which I gave a chance to an unknown girl called Micheline Prel, who played opposite Fernand Gravet. War had already been declared when I made a last film, Captain Fracasse, under intolerable conditions. In occupied Paris, I received a dangerous invitation to go to Berlin to make a film to the glory of the Führer. 24 hours later, I left secretly for Spain. I had false papers, and the Spanish made life very difficult. Nevertheless, I managed to start a film with Manolete, which unfortunately was never finished. On my return to Paris, I found I had been forgotten. I was without work for 12 long years. In 1954, I made The Tower of Nesle, which was a great commercial success, and people remembered that I existed. In the same year, I was awarded the International Prize for Inventions for my work including Polyvision, perspective sound, and the pictograph patented in 1938. The pictograph and the picturescope permitted not only absolutely pin-sharp focus of background and foreground, but also meant that sets could be replaced by simple cutouts or even by postcards. I used the system with great success in Louise, AYER and the Tower of Nesle. Despite this, the system was never very popular, even though it permitted savings of hundreds of millions of francs. Perhaps this was the reason. I still had a few tricks up my sleeve. In 1956, I returned to my old idea of Polyvision. With limited means, I prepared my experimental Magirama program. Polyvision is a new concept of expression in the cinema which will result in a complete revolution in the way in which we see things and the way in which we express ourselves in pictures, consequently, in the way in which we influence the audience. While the main action takes place on the central screen, the two other pictures of the triptych support and underline the main picture, just as in music, the counter-melody underlines the main melody. Magirama was presented in one of the smallest cinemas in Paris. The program was composed of several shorts and a Polyvision version of the 1938 version of AYER, in which I had incorporated some of the scenes of panic from the end of the world. The critics were good, but once again it turned out to be an experiment without a future. Once more I had to toe the line, and in 1959 I left for Yugoslavia to make Austerlitz. When watching a big feature, the audience would be stupefied if it were possible to see, in a sort of fourth dimension, at the same time as they watched the film, all the dramatic and humorous events associated with each scene in the film. If I may say a few words more about Polyvision, we would see on the main screen the scenes, and on the side screens, all the comedy and drama surrounding the film. Whenever I see a finished film, I am always far from my dream. There is always, so to speak, such a drop in voltage. An art as difficult as ours passes through so many hands and so many senses, through the hands of so many people of different habits who usually have little artistic appreciation, that in the end I find only a maximum of 20 to 25% of the original ideas committed to paper in moments of inspiration and frenzy. This is a great pity, because I think that with a voltage drop of between 10 and 15%, and if one could make films as one would like, they would be extraordinarily moving, so much so that the audience would be fixed to their seats or would scream with fear, joy, or terror. In 1962 I made Cyrano and D'Artagnan with José Ferré and Jean-Pierre Cassel.
Et vous l'avez, vous, dans votre scénario? Ben, moi, je l'ai pas. Oui, c'est lourdi cette scène. Elle est bien, c'est une bonne scène, mais elle est lourde.
Vicino al camino e poi l'aggiungo, no?
Chez moi, c'est ça, chez moi qu'on comprenne que c'est chez vous parce qu'on n'en sait rien. On vous voit entrer dans une pièce, c'est la première fois qu'on la voit.
Chez moi.
Donc chez moi, c'est important.
Chez moi.
Chez moi. À l'improviste. Et à lui.
Sans rendez-vous.
Sans rendez-vous.
Sans rendez-vous.
On insiste, c'est trois choses ont d'importance pour nous pour après.
Oui.
Bon, après.
Il me dit,
Voilà.
sans rendez-vous.
Sans rendez-vous. On met ce pavillon doudou où j'abrite.
The subconscious plays its role within us, and it could be that the subconscious in my dreams may have played a far greater part in my life than I imagined. When I think of what I have achieved, or rather what I could have achieved, this seems very true. Mathematics cannot be used for such things, but I imagine that if I had given but 5% of what I could have given, if the producers had better understood what I might have brought to the cinema 20 years ago, and if they had not made life difficult because I did not wish to wear the straitjacket of convention. The use of the subconscious of the dream to create reality must have played a role in the conception of my characters, situations, and ideas. I would like to see in the cinema of tomorrow the real magic for which it was created. I would like to see a school that is enthusiastic, lofty, and strong for the metamorphosis of man into man. The audience which leaves the cinema must not be the same as that which enters. Yet, look at the people coming out of our cinemas. Their faces are heavy and sad. It is rare that they are content. They have been cheated. There are more than 100 scenarios in my desk. I still hope that I shall have the chance of making films of some of them, and above all, Kingdom of the Earth, a story of this atomic age. I am always thinking about it. Sometimes I see my life as an office of lost dreams. Still, I always manage to make a comeback because I know that we must live our delirious dreams, that we must always live in an intellectual exaltation, which is the only thing that allows us to escape from this slow, sad biological evolution. With both feet tied, we must jump ahead into the circles of fire represented by our possibilities, without regard for the surprise and amazement of the onlookers. No matter to what heights we manage to advance our theatre or our cinema, there will always be an audience, even though it be only that part of ourselves which we have left behind.